Good morning. I hope you're all doing well. It's kind of a dark, cloudy day out there, and it's kind of early. Feels like it's early. Funny, just last week it was summer, and today we're definitely back into winter, and I'm wearing long sleeves. So that's the way life goes. Well, let's take a look at the October calendar. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you got your coffee. I've got some water here. I'm not quite ready for my first cup of coffee, but I will be soon. Okay, we're looking at October 19th through the 25th. Okay, so let's take a look at this. On the 19th, the Star Spangled Banner was first sung in 1814. Of course, we all learn that in school. All the school children have to learn that and sing it. At least I hope they still do. Also on October 19th, Thomas Edison, for the first time, had a successful demonstration of the electric light. And I've got the lights on this morning because it is kind of dark out there and cloudy, but it'll warm up later. And Thomas Edison, smart businessman. It was also on October 19th, the final battle of the Revolutionary War in 1781 that led to the founding of our country. October 20th is the 50th anniversary of another war that we fought much more recently, the Vietnam War. It's also the day that Sir James Chadwick in 1891 discovered the neutron, and that led to even more discoveries with atoms. On October 21st, the Guggenheim Museum first opened in 1959. Now, October 22nd is National Nut Day. I don't think it's the crazy nuts. I think it's the pecans and walnuts and other kinds of nuts that we love to eat. You can tell it's fall when you start changing your eating habits and what you like to eat. October 23rd, the iPod was first revealed, and then later the iPad, and then the iPhone. But the iPod came out in 2001, and technology's been taken off ever since. Also, it is now Red Ribbon Week. If the schools were open, they would be talking about the awareness of drugs and saying no to drugs and learning about the effects that some of these drugs can have on you. Also, on October 24th is National Bologna Day. I guess having a bologna day right after a nut day, that kind of makes sense. Do you remember the expression, oh, you're full of bologna? Well, yeah, so bologna and nuts, and they're both foods too. Isn't that interesting? Also, it is called United Nations Day. I don't know. I think that the United Nations has been meeting virtually. I don't think they're actually physically back in session yet. And the last one, October 25th, is the birthday of the famous artist Pablo Picasso. And he was born in Spain in 1881. Started a whole revolution we call modern art, which I'm still trying to figure out many years later. Okay, to get our morning off, let's do a good start. I've got a poem called Fall by my good friend Garnett Black. Fall is my favorite time of year by far. It's one last chance of warmth before the cold. Nature blends the soft, muted colors and splashes them with abandon as from a jar. They envelop and caress you in their mold. Enjoy these last few days, my friend. As the nights grow colder, it will signal their end. You know, every season has such wonderful things about it. I'm trying to put together a slideshow with beautiful, beautiful fall pictures that I can show you later. I'm still practicing. I don't want to blow it, so I'm working on getting that one ready for you. I have something here now about apples. But before I talk about apples, I want to talk about other autumn flavors, specifically the pumpkin. You know, red, orange, and yellow leaves and bright orange pumpkins. That's the symbols of our fall. It wouldn't be Halloween without jack-o'-lanterns. And in many homes, it would not be Thanksgiving without pumpkin pie. So there's a lot of things that we want to show you. I've got some pictures here. This is from something called the mini page years ago. I would cut these out of the newspaper for my students. There you see the jack-o'-lantern, and you can see that you light up the vegetables to scare away the evil spirits when it gets dark at night. And then spooky tales. There's an Irish legend, you know, that says the jack-o'-lantern was named after a man called Stingy Jack. And he tricked the devil, forcing him to keep Jack out of hell. But God did not think he was a very good man, so he would not let Jack enter into heaven either. The devil condemned Jack to wander over the earth at night. His only light was a turnip lantern lit with fire from hell. The legend says the Irish named this eerie ghost Jack-o'-lantern. Of course, other European countries have their own stories about the beginning of the jack-o'-lantern. But we know that in the 1800s, there's documented evidence of boys in Great Britain playing tricks and frightening people with the spooky vegetable lights. A lot of people say that there were mysterious lights appearing over the marshes, jack-o'-lanterns or will-o'-the-wisps, and that it meant no good. Well, the popular, powerful pumpkin is used in so many different products, and I want to show you some of the things. My son and I decided yesterday morning to go for a pumpkin buy of our own at Trader Joe's. I don't know if you ever like that store, but they have a lot of very interesting, unusual items. For instance, here is pumpkin bread and muffin mix. You make your pumpkin bread, and then all you have to do is add eggs and water. That's if you're in a hurry. Also, when you're done baking, you might want to spread it with some apple cider fruit spread. This looks really tasty to me. You ever make apple butter? That's really good too. You cook the apples down and you add certain spices. Well, because we're in Southern California, we have a little Mexican theme, fall harvest salsa. I love the labels. See the decorative, how pretty they are with the different things here. And this one has pumpkins, tomatoes, water, onions, apples, red bell peppers, a little jalapeno, honey, lime juice, and then salt and natural flavor, and garlic and cumin. And that looks really good. Very natural. No nitrates, no traits. The pumpkin butter, which is like apple butter. I love this spread on my pumpkin waffles. We also have pumpkin cranberry crisps, which is a type of cracker. And I'm noticing the cranberries, the canned cranberries are starting to come back into the stores. Thank goodness that the supply chain has worked its way past the COVID pandemic and they're able to get us things. Now, I also, with all of that, would want to make some autumn maple coffee. And again, they have a nice decorative thing. And this is a ground coffee that also has some pumpkin put into it. And then to sweeten it a little bit, I would add my coffee mate pumpkin spice, you know, the creamer that you can add to your coffee. Now, if I want some cereal, I can have Trader Joe's Pumpkin O's. Looks like Cheerios, but they've got a little bit of pumpkin in them. And this is a low-fat cereal. So along with that, I could have, there's my pumpkin there. I see it right up here. And I can have strawberries and bananas with it as well. Oh, my grandkids come over. They love to have cereal. Then when lunch comes around, I could have a pumpkin bisque, which is a type of soup. And in this soup is pumpkin puree, water, honey, what does that say? Pasteurized honey cream, olive oil, tahini, sesame seeds, apple cider, vinegar, cornstarch, garlic puree, citric acid. And then I might decide after all of that, for a snack in the afternoon, I've got to bake an apple pie and a pumpkin pie. And for the pumpkin pie, I need to have my pumpkin pie spice. And I haven't smelled it yet. I should open it up and take a whiff. Can you smell that? Makes me want to get in there and bake right now. All right, pumpkin pie spice. And pumpkin pie spice has ground cinnamon, ginger, lemon peel, nutmeg, cloves, and cardamom. You use it in pies, cakes, cookies, and custards. Never had a custard. I've had pumpkin pudding with the kids. Okay, well, the other big fruit, and did you know pumpkin is actually considered a fruit? I didn't know that either. We have apples. Now, pumpkin was a native plant that the Native Americans introduced the Pilgrims to, help keep them from starving their first few winters here. But apples were brought by settlers to Massachusetts from England, but it's not the apples that we know today. Apples reminded them of home, and the growing tree made a rough cabin seem less stark, more like the remembered cottages of Kent or Surrey. And in a few years, when the fruit found its way to the table, it became a staple of the pioneers' meager diet. Our apples are, without doubt, as good as those of England and much fairer to look at. That's what the writer P. Dudley wrote in his book, Philosophical Transactions, which he published in 1724, almost 300 years ago. In America, there was an indigenous apple tree, but it was a sour crab apple. Nothing like the sweet apples of Europe. And those apples had come from the area between the Black and Crimean Seas. Isn't that interesting how botanists can go back and trace the origins, the early origins of some of our food. In 1625, the clergyman William Blackston came to the Massachusetts Bay Colony to preach and till the soil. And on Beacon Hill in Boston, near the corner of Beacon and Charles Streets, if you know where they are, he laid out the first American apple orchard. We still have records of it. In parts of Maine, newcomers saw flourishing apple trees planted by the French who had explored there before them. By 1650, apples were growing in Maine, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. The colonists learned about corn, beans, and tuber potatoes from the Indians. The Indians grew apple trees from a bud grafted onto another stock tree. What they did with the crab apples, they mostly dried the fruit and chewed on it during the winter. By 1790s, the Indians in the Cayuga and Seneca Lakes regions had developed several apple orchards thanks to trading with the English settlers. And they were in the path of the expanding settlers. Unfortunately, in 1799, the U.S. Army destroyed their villages and wiped out acres and acres of their apple trees. In the Carolina Highlands, the settlers found more apple orchards surrounding the Creek, Cherokee, and Choctaw villages. The French missionaries had taught the Indians how to plant these kind of apple trees. The German refugees who came to eastern Pennsylvania fleeing religious persecution in their homeland, they had apple orchards, and Lord William Penn from Pennsylvania area had his own orchards planted to apple grafts in 1686. In the South, landowners such as Thomas and Jefferson and George Washington dabbled in scientific agriculture, and they grew apples as a hobby. Washington liked to prune his own trees, and he advocated the pruning of the apple tree to others as a beneficial exercise. He's a very, very healthy, hardy man. Now, what did they grow in 1686? They grew Maines, Pippins, Russentons, Costards, Marigold apples, Kings, and what they called bachelors. We still have the Parmains, the Pippins, and the Russentons today. Thankfully, Thomas Jefferson preserved a lot of the seeds from what he was experimenting with. Otherwise, so many of those kind of apples, the old-fashioned ones, would have died out by now. Think about the kind of apples you know. The Jonathans, which is a red and yellow color. The Granny Smiths, which are green and great for cooking. The Golden Delicious and the Red Delicious, grown in Washington State and parts of Northern California. Apples have been used as food, drink, forage for animals, wood for whittling. They whittled faces in apples. Small machine parts, I guess they would do in a pinch, and as a fragrant firewood. Wives learned to make apple butter, conserves, jellies, sun-dried fruit, and apple vinegar, which is still a good cleaning agent to this day. Now, you know the story of Johnny Appleseed. He was a pioneer who had a wandering foot. He traveled through parts of Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana, and where he went, he would give the settlers seeds. You know, it was a prerequisite if you wanted to get title to your land in parts of Ohio, you had to agree to plant at least 50 apple trees or 20 peach trees within 3 years of settling. No wonder they welcomed Johnny with his free seeds. Later, when more pioneers came, the apple trees had already grown up on their own. How did they preserve apples over the winter? They would take them down into the cold, cold cellar underground, and then they would put layers of straw over them way before refrigeration. Have you ever made apple cider? You have to be careful because if it gets a little bit of air into it and it's not sealed properly, it will ferment and make an apple whiskey, which can blow up in your basement. And I have had cider blow up on me years and years ago when I first learned how to make it. I had an apple stand myself with a girlfriend of mine, and we had our little kids. We didn't have quite as many kids then, so we had babies at that time, and the babies could play in a playpen, and we were in Wenatchee, Washington, selling our apples and having a lot of fun with that. After World War II, a new storage technique was developed called controlled atmosphere. They could decrease the ratio of oxygen in the air and allow more carbon dioxide, 3 to 5% in there. The normal respiration or breathing of the apple fruit slowed down to almost a stop. And you could store these hard apples at 33 degrees and preserve them for so much longer. They also, scientists and botanists, changed the size and the form of the apple tree. The standard tree was tall and grew up to 40 feet high. It's hard to pick the apples, though. Well, George Washington seemed to do it. So now they can manipulate the genes of the tree. They can breed the tree stock, and they have mixed standards and dwarf apple trees. And, so we have a much shorter tree, easier to reach with a 20-foot ladder or a 15-foot ladder or a stepping stool. What kind of apples and how did you use them? Think about, how did you eat your apples? Well, I got a list from one of my senior topics classes. I'm sure if I was there in person with you, I could get an even bigger list. Here's what they came up with. Brown Betty on bread, apple crunch, Swedish apple dessert, apple pie, apple dumplings, apple cobbler, oh yes, applesauce cake, apple butter, apple chutney, basic apple jelly, relish, fritters, broiled apple slices, cider, and pie. Think about, what is your favorite kind of apple? Just a few more things here. I know we have an election coming up, and the presidential election is only once every 4 years. I'm not going to say anything controversial, but I am going to say a few things that are absolutely hilarious. This is interesting facts about United States presidential elections. There's only been one so-called clean election in American history, and that was most likely the first one in 1789 when George Washington ran unopposed. But even then, Alexander Hamilton was trying to pilfer votes away from the potential vice president, John Adams. There's still some hanky-panky. It wasn't until 1856 that Congress removed property ownership as a requirement to vote in elections, although it was still only white men who could vote. The United States presidents choose which Bible or books they want to use when they swear their oath of office on Inauguration Day. President Obama chose 2 Bibles, the Lincoln Bible and the Martin Luther King Jr.'s Bible. I know that President Trump used his grandmother's Bible, which had been in the family for several generations. During the 1872 election, the presidential incumbent Ulysses S. Grant, who'd been a well-known general during the Civil War, ran against a corpse. His opponent, Horace Greeley, died before the election was finalized. Luckily, Grant won the election. Strange things. Truth is stranger than fiction. In 1870, Congress passed the 15th Amendment, which granted the right to vote to African Americans and other non-white men. However, an African American's right to vote was often denied in the South and parts of the North until the 1960s. Sojourner Truth was a Black woman activist who was a freed slave, and she tried to vote in one of the elections. Of course, the men turned her away. Susan B. Anthony was arrested for attempting to vote in the presidential election about the same time that Sojourner Truth was trying to vote. American women of all races finally won the right to vote in 1920. They won it by one vote cast by a young man who was going to vote against it. And then he got a letter from his mother pleading with him to be a good boy and do the right thing. And he said, I cannot deny my mother, who is an honest and wise woman. And his vote was the deciding vote that gave us the right to vote. Congress finally gave Native Americans the right to vote in presidential elections in 1924. However, some states, bitter over the terrible Indian Wars, banned them from voting until the 1940s. George Washington is the only one in U.S. history to ever win 100% of the electoral college vote. This is mainly because organized parties were not yet formed, and he ran unopposed. Actress Roseanne Barr once attempted to run for president. She got as far as filing with the Federal Election Commission under the Green Tea Party ticket. You know that George Washington blew his entire campaign budget on 160 gallons of liquor to serve to potential voters. I never knew that about him. Oh my gosh, that is funny. In 1845, Congress decided the voting day would be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, which was after the fall harvest and before winter conditions made traveling too difficult. Before then, in the early 1800s, people could vote from April to December. Talk about a long voting season. Andrew Jackson's inaugural party was so wild, Jackson snuck out of the White House. In those days, you could walk in and whenever you wanted to. No Secret Service then. He snuck out and he spent the night at a hotel. So his servants were stuck with all these unruly people. What did they do? They finally dragged the tubs of punch, some were spiked, out onto the lawn to lure out the crowds and then shut the doors and lock them. Here's a picture of what that looked like, a painter painting the scene. That was the White House during the time of Andrew Jackson. Oh dear. During the 1776 presidential campaign, Thomas Jefferson secretly hired a writer named James Callender to attack his opponent, John Adams, in print. Callender called Adams a hermaphroditical character who had neither the force of a man nor the gentleness of a woman. Later, Callender was thrown in jail for insurrection. Why did the Democrats use a donkey as their mascot? Well, that was thanks to Andrew Jackson. When his critics called him a jackass because of his populist views, he embraced the image and even used it alongside his slogan, "Let the people rule." Well, that makes me wonder if the donkey, why do the Republicans use what they use for a mascot? Haven't found out the answer to that one yet. John Adams later complained, he's a sore loser, the only reason George Washington was chosen for everything, including president, because he was taller than anyone else in the room. I'm going to stop there, and next week I will give you some more interesting facts about U.S. presidential elections. And it's time for me to go get my coffee. I think it's perking and about ready. I'm going to say goodbye. So I hope you have a wonderful week. enjoying the fall colors and the fall scents and the fall foods. Bye, everybody. I miss you. I hope to see you one of these weeks. Sometime soon, I hope. Have a good week.